New religious movements especially, and again, probably not surprisingly, face a lot of opposition, especially as they're starting out, but also as people get to know about them and hear about them and maybe some of their ideas, and that opposition can take a variety of forms. One might be simply humor or sarcastic comments. Oh, do you know what those people believe? They believe, and oh, that's crazy. Why would anybody believe that? And so it could just be something like that, and joking about certain groups of people coming to your door and wanting you to buy this or read this or something like that. Still can be obviously very hurtful to the individual or the group, but a minimal form of opposition. Once we start moving on, though, we can see that opposition can take other forms as well. Marginalization within the society. Humor might start off as the way you're opposed, but maybe further and further, all right, we don't want those kind of people here. Right? They don't belong here. If you're going to be that way, you need to live over in this part of town, or you need to live outside of town, or we don't serve your kind here. All of those kinds of things would be efforts of marginalization, trying to keep people outside of society and get them out of the mainstream and the influential parts of society. But that opposition can also escalate, and has in a variety of places with a variety of groups, to the loss of rights, to legislation, either forbidding the group or putting a lot of burden upon the group. This even happens in the United States, where supposedly we have religious freedom, but the government and the courts often say there are limits to that freedom, and based on a variety of approaches to society. And so, we can see it even here, but it's definitely more extensive in some other places with some specific groups. We won't talk about Scientology now. Hopefully, we'll have the chance to pick it up in a later class. But that's a group especially that has faced a lot of legislation and legislative opposition in places like Germany, some other places like that, where even though there's technically religious freedom, they don't look at Scientology as a religious movement, and so they've kind of curtailed the rights of Scientologists, created a variety of legislation. And then, of course, opposition might go to the extremes of people being arrested, people being thrown in prison, loss of possessions or property, maybe even death. Less likely these days, but in some countries, still a possibility that it could happen. And so a lot of opposition. So thinking about all this opposition, how is it that these new religious movements last in the face of all of this? Well, there's a couple other things. We talked about the need for routinization, but there's a couple other things that are often necessary for a new religious movement to continue. And I think that if you look at some groups that would fit into this umbrella that are still very existing and very prominent ones, you see these kind of things. And I think of specifically here the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. In the early years, there was a lot of opposition to Mormonism. People being arrested, people being kicked out of town, sometimes even executions. There was a lot of fear, and Mormonism was looked upon as a threat by a lot of people. But one of the things that I think is occurred within Mormonism, it's still a group that faces a lot of opposition of the humor and sarcastic kind. It's still a group that it's not totally integrated into American society in all ways with all people, but it's much more of an accepted group than it was in the 1830s, for example. And one of the things that I think has been a part of that is this way in which Mormonism has become less threatening. And so new religious movements last because they find that balance, or they try to find that balance between not being a threat to society, yet also being distinctive enough where it is different. Right? And so you have to, you have to be distinctive enough that people will say, okay, you're offering something different, but you don't want to be too crazy or require too much that people are turned off, right? You want me to do what? I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be a part of that group. So finding that balance is very important for new religious movements to last. Also very important, and this is important for religions in general, is making those bonds between practitioners. You need to encourage people to remain committed to each other, to develop close relationships. Have something to focus on, something that can be handed on from generation to generation. The important stories of the founder, something that draws people together, and then also something that is appealing to outsiders. What is it that would make this something people would want to be a part of? New religious movements, of course, also last if the social setting is positive toward that kind of thing. And what I mean by that is new religious movements last in places where there is religious, spiritual, emotional, psychological instability. And so if it's a society where everything's going good, new religious movements might not have too much to appeal to. But if it's a society where crime is on the rise, or there are great fears about something happening, or society, there's been a lot of corruption in society or religion or government, those are the places where new religious movements can find fertile ground to develop and last. Like I said, if everything's going good, it's not as likely that people are going to be interested in joining such a group. If they can critique mainstream religions, they can point to hypocrisy or misdealing with finances or some other aspect of saying, look, this religion or these leaders, they're not truly concerned about spirituality. They're concerned about money or power or prestige. If they can do that, they can kind of offer an alternative that might be appealing to people. Very important for new religious movements especially is not just appealing to outsiders, but really keeping those younger generations. Unless they can keep those younger generations, they are not going to survive. In many cases, these new religious movements, while they might bring in some people, often it is not enough to replace those that are leaving once they get older. Once they get older, then once they get older, where they can make their own decisions. Sorry, I've kind of blanked there a minute. Once they get older, where they can make their own decisions, they have the opportunity where they can leave, and so that makes it difficult. To try and keep people if the kids think that it's too weird, right? If they're concerned that they're going to appear too strange to their peers, they're less likely to stay. What is it that makes new religious movements appealing? Why is it that people join them? Now, yes, there might be some sort of manipulation or deception that occurs. But as far as like genuine groups that are really trying to develop, a religious response, or people that are genuinely convinced that they have the right path, they're appealing for a variety of reasons to people. Some people are just interested in alternative belief systems. They're just interested in the new, the different, sometimes the strange. You know, that becomes a challenge for you know, us that might not. Why would you join something like that? Well, people just don't like the status quo sometimes, and so they like being different and participating in different types of things. Now, most people don't. Most people don't like that idea of being different or strange. But there are people that are like that. Might be appealing because of, if you're a person who's marginalized in society for a variety of reasons, you might find a new religious group appealing because you might think, well, they know how I feel. They have experienced marginalization. They're on the outskirts of society. I'm on the outskirts of society. You know, that might be a reason to join. Is that, well, this is a place for me finally. This is a group I can participate with, who I can relate to. For some, the critique, the criticism that a group has of mainstream society might be appealing. Right? That if you personally feel there's something wrong with society, and then you hear somebody else saying the same kinds of things, you know, that might be a reason to join. Just the charisma of the leader or the charisma of the people that are a part of it, right? The appeal there, it's, you know, this guy seems really nice, or, you know, the people that are a part of it, they seem very happy, they seem very settled, they seem very stable. All of those kind of things make something appealing that otherwise we might not think would be appealing. We turn now from talking about some of the theory and attendant issues of new religious movements to looking at a couple of different religious movements, new religious movements. I don't want to suggest that these are, what's the word I'm looking for, that these are any sort of, like, if serving as exemplars of every group is like this. Nor do we really have the time to talk about all sorts of new religious movements. And so this is a very selective examination of some groups. Furthermore, you know, we just don't have the time to look in detail of any one of these groups. You know, some of these groups or some new religious movements, we could probably take an entire semester looking at the groups, or just new religious movements as a group. But these, I think, are some rather interesting ones that show you a wide extreme of where new religious movements might fall. One set of groups are those that probably most people would accept calling cults. You know, these extreme examples of what we see. And these are especially extreme examples, right? These are not representative examples of new religious movements at all. Because in many respects, these are groups that ended with mass death. But still have some very interesting histories and stories. The first is the People's Temple. The People's Temple was started by a man named Jim Jones. Jim Jones was a pastor affiliated with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And you know, he was a very successful minister, very charismatic individual. He was especially different, not just because of, you know, eventually developing a cult, but you know, at the time period he's living, the 50s and 60s, and then into the 70s when a lot of things start happening, he was advanced with respect to race and integration. So the People's Temple, as it develops, is integrated. He's open to equality and harmony. He's teaching that, and that's probably part of the appeal that a lot of people saw in the People's Temple was this interest in promoting equality. The Disciples of Christ is a mainline denomination. It developed out of the same kind of stirrings that led to the American Restoration movement. That's part of the heritage of the Churches of Christ, which is what Faulkner is affiliated with. But there's a variety of things that led to splits between the Churches of Christ and the Disciples of Christ. But one of the things that, and both though would be fairly mainstream in their theology. The People's Temple, however, Jones kind of moves more towards Pentecostalism, and in his early career starts teaching or practicing faith healing, and would later make the claims that he had raised people from the dead, that he had cured cancer, other things like that. Eventually, in the late 1960s, he moved the church from Indianapolis to California, and becomes very popular in California. There was one group of the People's Temple that stayed in Indianapolis. He moves another group to California, becomes successful there. He is recognized by a bunch of civic organizations. He is named a humanitarian. He's named one of the most influential clergymen by a religious magazine. So in a lot of ways, he is well respected in the community and in other places. In 1973, the church buys 27,000 acres in the country of Guyana in South America. With ostensibly, this is to start a mission down there. And it's beginning in the 1970s that things start getting a concern. A variety of rumors start floating around. Right? Yeah, he's been recognized, he's been given awards, but then the rumors of financial misdealings, of beatings, of other type of intimidation, brainwashing. There's even accusations or rumors of murders. And so Jones takes a rather sizable group down to Guyana to escape some of this, which is called, the area becomes known as Jonestown. Well, once this group goes down, a lot of the family and friends remaining in the States become very concerned about this and what's happening to their friends and family. So they're trying to file lawsuits. They're trying to file lawsuits. They are trying to appeal to Congress, to other political leaders to do something about this. Well, in November of 1978, Representative Leo Ryan of California travels down to Guyana, flies down there to see what's going on. And as he, talks with many of the people of Jonestown, most of them seem to be very happy where they are. There's not there doesn't appear to be people kind of imprisoned against their will or anything like that. There are a handful of people who are interested in returning back to the United States. And so they are going to leave with Ryan. It appears to Ryan that they are being, it's okay, yeah, if you want, there's no reason you have to stay here. Nobody's going to force you to stay. If you want to go back to your friends and family, that's fine. On November 18th at 4 p.m., right, November 18th, 1978, Ryan and others are getting ready to board an airplane at the airport when they are shot and killed. An hour later, Jim Jones starts a process of what's known as White Night. White Night involved the suicide of all the members of Jonestown. Most of them, most of the 914 that died from drinking Kool-Aid, which had been laced with cyanide. And so, if you've heard the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid," I haven't drunk the Kool-Aid, or I have drunk the Kool-Aid. It's coming from this. This the fact that, here are these people who, many of them willingly, from all indications, drank this Kool-Aid, knowing what was in it. That's one of the further strange parts about all this, is that there appears to have been a trial run of this, that, without the cyanide. And so white night had been practiced. I guess the assumption or the belief was it was going to be needed. Right? So the people knew what was going on, or at least appeared to, or had the possibility of know what's going on. So most died from the Kool-Aid. 4, including Jones, died from gunshots. Some people had puncture wounds on them. There were about 260 children that died, most likely from the Kool-Aid that was given to them by their parents. Dogs, livestock, other animals were poisoned as well. About 100 people escaped this, either because they were away at the time, or they fled when all of this was going on. After the assassination of Representative Ryan, of course, the FBI are called in to investigate. They come upon Jonestown. You might not be able to make it out too well in that picture, but towards the back of the picture on the right, that's what they found. It's just the compound littered with bodies. You can find online a copy of the White Night service. Jones evidently taped a lot of his sermons and those kind of things down there, and you can hear the people, and listen to the people talking to each other, and talking to Jones, and Jones telling them what to do about all of this. It's really kind of eerie, to think that these people are just minutes away from killing themselves. But those tapes were found, of course, once the FBI started investigating